Okay, if I look slightly like ill-prepared for this, it's because I am. Oops. But that's fine. Hey folks, my name is Jen, and today we are going to talk about the books that I ended up reading in April. So I'm gonna try, I know I say this a lot, I'm gonna try to actually be quick this time for realsies though, because I have a scheduling problems, so yeah, I'm gonna legitimately try to be quick. Okay, so yeah, the books that I read, these are the books that I read in April. So what I read in April was, let me see, 6 books? This seems to be like a common thing with me this year, is having months in which I read just 6 books. So yeah, I read mostly was not on my TBR for the month. I basically said fuck the TBR. So that's great. Get into what I actually did read. Oh, I did have one book that I DNF'd in April actually. I DNF'd one book this past month, and it was The Inspector and Mrs. Jeffries, and that is by Emily, I can't read my own writing, Brightwell? I think it's Brightwell. This was an audiobook that I started back in like, I want to say December or January, like that. And the premise sounded really interesting. It is about a bumbling police inspector. This takes place in like England in the, I want to say the early, like the turn of the century, the early 1900s. And he's not very good, but the reason why he has gotten this far is because of Mrs. Jeffries, his housekeeper, who not only runs his household and is very capable of that, but she also has a brilliant detecting mind and has managed to help get him to this point. And the concept of it sounded very interesting and also really funny, considering that Mrs. Jeffries is also really good at basically corralling the rest of the household staff into helping her with these you know, detecting little jobs, being gossipy and, you know, tailing people, doing stuff like that, sneaking around, and kind of frames it that it's not really coming from her, but it's like to help their boss, the inspector, but in reality it's her brilliant mind and stuff like that. So the whole thing sounded really delightful and exactly like the kind of thing that I would like, and it just ended up not being that way. I did really like the interactions between like all of the household staff and the kind of like found family aspect of it, I guess, that they have with each other. But I just really, after a while, got very tired of the inspector. I thought he's such a major idiot. And even with the brilliant help of Mrs. Jeffries, I cannot possibly believe that anyone could ever believe that he ever came up with solutions on his own, because he's the largest moron that I have ever read of in detective fiction, and I've read a fair good chunk of mysteries at this point. And Mrs. Jeffries, she's always so right all the time, and that kind of grated on me a little bit too. So I ended up DNFing that book. And it's like a whole series, so that's also unfortunate, because now I'm like, yeah, I don't really care about that either. But I guess that means that I won't be spending money on another series, so that's something. I finished rereading The Wee Free Men and my annotation of it. The Wee Free Men, this is part of the Discworld series, and it is the first in a 5-book arc that is following Tiffany Aching. She is in this book, a 9-year-old girl who desperately misses her grandmother who died a couple of years ago, and she wants to be a witch because of something horrible that happened in her area recently, and she has decided she wants to become a witch so she can ensure that nothing like that ever happens ever again under her watch. Recently, the veil, I guess, between Discworld and the other world has kind of thinned, and monsters have come through, and one of these Fae have stolen her younger brother, so she goes and enlists the help of the tiny pixies, the Wee Freemen, ridiculous bunch of dudes, to aid her in her quest of finding fairyland so she can get her brother back. This book. I have talked about this book before. I think I shared a little bit of my annotating with you all. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Just hands down, one of the top books. Absolutely adore this book so much, and I think that I possibly loved it even more on this go around than I had the first time. My annotating, I might choose to go in more depth as to what I did exactly with this in the future, but basically what I did was I just chose different things, colors, as you can see, to kind of tab and highlight, and then I also ended up making sad little like drawings as well. You can see there's a little Tiffany Aching with her frying pan. It was much the same experience of The Shining. I feel like I possibly got just a little bit more out of this than I had the first time, but it still, for me, just packs such an emotional punch overall, between just kind of relating to Tiffany, which sounds very weird, I guess, to, you know, be someone in your 30s relating to a 9-year-old kid, but like Tiffany is basically the hero that I wish I had as a 9-year-old. Like, I wish that this had existed when I was a kid. I think this came out in like 2003 or something like that, so I wasn't little at that point, but I wish that this character had existed when I was younger, and that this had been a thing, because I feel like, yeah, she's exactly the type of hero that I would have wanted when I was a kid, because she is flawed, and she's got her issues and stuff like that, but she's also just so clever and strong and brave, and at the heart of it, she has like this like moral code that she's really trying to follow and to do right by people, and also do right by the memory of her granny, who was this like larger than life character, and always did try to do right by the people of the Chalk, which is the area in which they live. And yeah, I just loved her. I loved her like questioning things, and like just her thirst for knowledge, and her deciding that, well, if no one's going to do the right thing, then I guess I'm going to have to be the one to do the right thing. And I just really admired that and loved that, and I just loved that whole aspect of it, and I just loved the memories of Granny Aching, and like her relationship with her grandmother, and how her like I said, is this larger than life character who's no longer being there is felt so deeply. And as someone who has been and was very close with my grandparents, especially one of my grandmothers. Like, that just packs such an emotional punch in such such a major way that I feel like I can't properly really articulate how much this book means to me, especially in that, in the things that Terry Pratchett wrote about in here, like, you know, dealing with grief and stuff like that. It's just so profound and beautiful, but it's also Discworld, so there's also societal observances and satirical bits and just really funny pieces as well, and Discworld itself is just so gorgeous. Even the somewhat shady parts, but of course this takes place out in the Shock, so it's it's not quite as shady as, you know, Ankh-Morpork or something, which I feel like I probably mispronounced, but that's okay. I just absolutely adore this book with my whole heart. So yeah, loved this reread. Gave it 5 stars. Yeah. The next book that I read, which was also technically not on my list, was The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. This is also actually a reread. I feel like I can't describe this as well as is described on here. Cecily Cardew and Gwendolyn Fairfax are both in love with the same mythical suitor. Jack Worthing has wooed Gwendolyn as Ernest, while Algernon has also posed as Ernest to win the heart of Jack's ward, Cecily. When all 4 arrive at Jack's country home on the same weekend, the rivals to fight for Ernest's undivided attention and the Ernest to claim their beloved's pandemonium breaks loose. It's wild. Haha. It's crazy. I really love this play. We read this in college. Loved it. This is still the only Oscar Wilde work I've ever read, and it just reminded me again that, oh hey, I do want to read more of his things in the future because he was absolutely hilarious. Again, societal observances, witty, super witty things. I liked going through this volume again because I've got my little commentary and stuff that I wrote when I was studying in college, and then I went over it again and I highlighted my favorite pieces that I read this time, and it also reminded me that I've never actually seen a performance of this, and now I need to go look up the movie. I know there was one made with Colin Firth and Rupert Everett years ago, so yeah, I have to go find that and watch it because I haven't seen it before, and I want to see how it translates to actual visual, media. But yeah, this is a lot of fun. It's very witty, very quick. Wordplay is fantastic. The banter and everything is great. If you've never read anything by Oscar Wilde before, again, I'm saying this as someone who, this is the only thing I've read of his, but I would suggest that you read it because it's just so fucking funny. Yeah, I believe I gave this 5 stars. Oh, yes I did. I gave it 5 stars. Okay, the next book I read, I finished my lunchtime read, which is also another Terry Pratchett book. It was Sorcery. So it's following basically this line where there was an 8th son of an 8th son. So he was a wizard. And then this wizard ended up having 8 sons, and his 8th son is a wizard squared, which of course is a source of magic, making him a sorcerer. Yeah, and basically this is about that sorcerer as a young person deciding that maybe he needs to be in charge of all of the wizards in Discworld, and shenanigans ensue. This features the wizard Rincewind, who we have seen in other volumes, The Color of Magic and also The Light Fantastic. He was introduced in those two novels. He is, as they say, the worst wizard you've ever heard of, but you have heard of him. He's my favorite terrible wizard. He is legitimately bad, but I really love him. He is freaking ridiculous. But though he is my favorite, I do have to say that I think my favorite parts of the book are when the POV like shifted to other secondary characters like Death. Death is in here again, and his pals hanging out. Those are some great scenes. And also Luggage. So the character of the sentient piece of luggage that consumes things that it doesn't enjoy. Yeah, that character is back. The librarian is also in this. I acquired a orangutan stuffy recently because I wanted to have my own librarian to guard my library. He is now my favorite character next to Tiffany Aching and Granny Weatherwax. I freaking love the librarian. He's fantastic. There was one part that I was a little bit bummed out about, and it did have a couple of slow sections that, you know, it felt like maybe there could have been a little bit more going on, but things jump-started again fairly quickly again, and the action picked right back up, so I can't really complain that much about it. Overall, it was still like really entertaining and funny, and there was also a little bit of heart in this, and I think that's something that Terry Pratchett does or did very well, was to be absolutely off the walls crazy one second, but then also have something like really wise or very sweet on the page as well. So yeah, I really loved this read. And yeah, it's on to the next book in the series afterwards, which I think I actually accidentally read Weird Sisters before Sorcery. But yeah, I'm on to, I think, Pyramids next, I think is my next read. But yeah, I enjoy this. I gave this 4 stars. The next thing I read, actually the next couple of things, the first of which was on my list. And it was The Girl from the Other Side. So this is the Deluxe Omnibus 1, and I also read the Deluxe Omnibus 2. So these are by Nagabe. These books, I don't even know, what can I say about these? This is basically, The Girl from the Other Side is about a world in which there are 2 sides of it, basically. One in which people kind of live and are chill and stuff, and then there's another side, the other side, where the cursed beings, the cursed creatures live. Everything is centering kind of around this little girl. She was found abandoned on the other side by this creature. This is in a world where people have become cursed and they're starting to turn into kind of shadow creatures like this. And this curse is spread by touch. And anything this creature touches, well, those people also become cursed. And what happens is that they start losing feeling in their extremities, and then but the thing is that they've lost their humanity, and they kind of start losing their memories, forgetting who they are and what it was like to be human, and they don't really need to eat or drink or sleep even, so they kind of turn into like monsters of a sort. This creature, though, he's not really named. The little girl calls him like teacher, but he doesn't fully remember everything of who he was. At times, he seems like he kind of remembers bits and pieces of his life, and that sets him apart from some of the other creatures who have basically lost, like, all of their humanity. And he finds this abandoned little girl and decides that he is gonna, like, take care of her. And so it's kind of got that found family trope that I love so very much. The artwork in here is just absolutely drop dead gorgeous. I watched the OVA of this and loved it. I can't get over how freaking absolutely gorgeous this artwork is for the most part. Like, it just so good. I also really love the fact that besides it being, like, so pretty and so detailed, there's also, like, a certain kind of subtlety in the facial expressions when it's done as well that, like, shows so much emotion, basically, in just not that much change in like the art itself, and it's just so good. Actually, I won't show this art because it's got like a spoiler in it, but yeah, these are just absolutely beautiful. The timeline of this story is very different from the OVA. Things change a little bit. There's definitely more context within here than there was in the OVA. So I think you could either watch or read these without, like, being super spoiled for either, really, because because of how that timeline is different. It just seemed like in the OVA we got information in a different order than we did in here. And I watched that like a couple of months ago and I'd forgotten like part of it. So it really, yeah, I didn't really get any spoilers for this at all. And like I said, we get a lot more context in here. So beautiful. Is also really creepy, and there's different parts of it that are rather unsettling, which is pretty good if you want like a gentle kind of scare. I really can't wait to read more of this series. There was kind of a cliffhanger in this volume, so I definitely want to get the rest. I think there's at least one more omnibus that's out currently, and then I think there's like a fourth one that is going to be released at some point either this year or next year. I will say things can get pretty confusing. There is an explanation of how the world works and how things are going on, but it still feels like we haven't gotten the full story yet. So it's a little bit confusing still at the moment, but I think that's how it's supposed to be. I think we're kind of learning information as teacher is basically learning information and stuff like that. So it makes sense that it's still a little bit confusing right now. But yeah, I really enjoyed both of these. Can't wait to get the rest of the series, and I gave these both 4 stars. The big boy, the piece de resistance, the last book that I read in April was, of course, The Three Musketeers, which both of these were on my 23 and 23 list, so that's 2 more down, and then this puppy was also on it, so I'm doing, I'm not fully on track, but I'm better than I was before this month, so it's fine. D'Artagnan is a young man who is off to Paris to make his fortune. He wants to become a musketeer more than anything in the entire world. And he has a rough start to his entrance into Paris. He has a run-in with someone who is now his sworn enemy. And then he ends up making a not so great first impression on 3 of the king's musketeers. And through some circumstances, in which they're going to fight each other, things turn out a little bit different, and he instead becomes bosom buddies with these three musketeers, Porthos, Athos, and Aramis. So this is basically detailing these four silly, ridiculous chuckleheads' friendship amidst the backdrop of a France that is heading towards war. There's religious wars going on between the Protestants and the Catholics. There's an underlying war, kind of, sort of, for control, basically, between King Louis XIII and Cardinal Richelieu. Then we have the King's Musketeers and the Cardinal's Guards also getting into fights all the time. There's political intrigue. There's some sexy stuff. There's a lot going on in this book. Yeah. As you can see, I enjoyed it. This annotation it's not like serious like my other like full in-depth ones. It's the only reason there's a change in tabs is because I ran out of green tabs and I switched to yellow. These are basically favorite quotes, favorite sections I highlighted and like tabbed them. So that's what this is. You can see I really enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun. It is an action-packed, swashbuckling adventure, which is honestly what Dumas is so good at. There's funny societal observances with very witty exchanges between characters. I really love the banter between D'Artagnan and the other three. It's just such friend banter that they do with each other back and forth, and I just really appreciate just ragging on each other. That was always delightful. This is also really full of terribly flawed heroes that even though I really did not agree with all of their actions, and there were a couple that I was like very upset about certain actions that they took, things that they said. At the end of the day, I just really could not help rooting for them every time. Like, even when they had done something so freaking terrible. There was such, like, emotional bits in here as well, such beautiful descriptions. Like, there's a description in here of a moonlit forest that took my breath away. And just so gorgeous, so many profound thoughts as well, and like wisdom kind of thrown in and just sprinkled here and there in between the absolute ridiculous buffoonery of these boys, and also just a lot of crazy action and stuff. And I think all of that together just showed how good of a writer that Alexandre Dumas was, and it's really a testament to his writing overall that despite these characters, especially a couple of them being just pretty downright shitty at times, like I said, I still rooted for them, and I still wanted the best for them, and I still loved this all the way through, even at a couple of parts where I was like, oh, I did not like that. But I still really enjoyed this reading experience. I will say it was not quite the same as with Count of Monte Cristo, where that felt more like a full-blown experience, and I was just like blown away completely by the writing, and the ending just made me feel, even though there was parts of it that felt bittersweet, it just made me feel so like hopeful and happy, and just like, yeah, just like blown away overall by the entire thing. I didn't quite feel that way at this ending. I just kind of had this melancholic feeling settle over me at the end, but I did still really enjoy this. I think I'd said previously that there are other books in the Musketeers cycle, and I do want to check them out. I do still want to check them out, but it's not quite as urgent, because I think there wasn't a cliffhanger, basically. So, I don't think Dumas knew at the time when he finished writing this that he was gonna write more, I don't think. So, yeah, it's not quite as urgent for me to check out the other books. So I think I can wait a little bit before doing so, but I do definitely still plan on reading all of them, because ultimately I think I just plan on reading everything this dude ever wrote, because I just can't help coming back for more. It's just so good. He is so good. Loved this. Recommend it. You want to know more thoughts about this, if you haven't looked at my Three Musketeers vlog part 1 that I posted last week, go check that out. I am still editing my part 2 vlog. That one is probably going to be a long one. Sorry guys. I don't know if I can cut it down too much and still make it make sense when I'm ranting about things. But if you are interested in in an in-depth discussion of the rest of the book, because part 1 covers 30% of this and part 2 will cover the rest. That version, though, that will be completely spoilerific. Like, there's no way I could have talked about anything else in here and not given a bunch of spoilers. So, be aware of that if you want to check that out. But yeah, when I post that next week. But yeah, if you're interested in knowing more in-depth thoughts, look at those. But yeah, at the moment, I just adored this a lot. I gave this like 4 stars. So yeah, that was everything that I ended up reading in April. Not really the TBR that I thought I was going to get through, and not really as many as I thought I was going to get to. But you know what they say, quality over quantity. It was a pretty good reading month overall. I don't think I didn't have one disappointment this month, which is pretty good, because I feel like for a few months now I've had at least one that's been a letdown often. But no, it was a pretty good reading month this month, so can't really complain. Let me know if you've read any of these, what your thoughts were about them. If you would like to read any of them, I would recommend all of them. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for always watching. If you would like to consider subscribing, please do so. I hope you all are having a great start to your May, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.